What's up, everybody? Peter Exodus O'Coffer here. Welcome to another episode of Classic Songs, and today we're doing one of my all-time favorites, Light My Fire by the Doors. Now, I had no idea going into this episode how many people have covered this song. I know I did Yesterday by the Beatles, and it's supposed to be the most covered song of all time. But, just as we jump in here, and I'll let you know, I have a Spotify list. It's called, and it's on, open to the public. Just go under, look under Peter Exodus O'Coffer. 43 covers. And there's some out there I didn't get, but awful lot of rock and roll Hall of Famers have covered this song. So yeah. So let's jump in. 7 minutes 6 seconds. That's the long version. There's the single version's 2 minutes 52 seconds. Originally there wasn't a short version for radio, but it was radio DJs were so taken aback by the song. We were like, we can't play this 7-minute version, but we sure would love to be able to play a shorter version. And so I think essentially what they did is they cut out those iconic, been a minute since I listened to it, and I'm winging it here, but when it comes to the radio version, they took out the iconic organ and guitar solos, which my favorite, parts of the song. But I get it. You wanted to get some airplay. This is one of those. Well, I think there's pretty clean cuts, and I understand it, and there's not many of my own songs if they came to me with that. But I think if I was the Doors, I would have gladly did the cuts and sent those over, because it's still a great song even without that. I mean, you just have to understand radio's point of view, and it still works. So Rolling Stone, the top 500 songs of all time, 2004 and 2010, it was both times it clocked in at 35. 2021, when they did the reshuffle, 310, I think it should still be, higher than that, but hey. The Doors, 7 top 10 songs overall, 2 number ones, Light My Fire and Hello, I Love You. This was number 1 for 3 weeks. Let's see, it's A minor. Uses the same chord progression as John Coltrane's Favorite Things. And interestingly enough, I think it was their Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction when they did it with Robbie, 2011 with Eddie Vedder. I think it's Vedder or Veter. I think it's Vedder though, but if I'm wrong, sorry. But Robbie Kreiger, the guitarist, he kind of sneaks in My Favorite Things, is, part of that iconic, guitar solo. Also inspired a little bit by the melody of Hey Joe, Jimi Hendrix, and Playing with Fire by the Rolling Stones. Consider psychedelic rock with a little jazz fusion. Let's see. Robbie Krieger's the composer. He did most of the work. I think he also did, and the whole band contributed to this. John Densmore, the drummer, got that little Latin feel. He's brought that Latin feel on the drums, and a little bit in his solo. Robbie Kreiger brings in his Spanish flamenco type guitar stuff. Jim Morrison wrote the second verse and part of the chorus, and usually, which is pretty interesting because Jim did more. Usually on most songs he did, more if not all the lyrics, and then Ram Manzarek came up with that classic, the organ open, and of course he did that great, iconic organ solo as well. Live, this song is very famous for its jazz improvisation. I argue at some point I'm going to do an episode on jam bands, and in my opinion, the Doors are the first jam band, and light my fire along with the end were some of their they didn't jam band all the time, but they certainly went all out on those two when the music's over, and some of those other ones. So the Ed Sullivan Show, you can actually YouTube this, and it's actually, I think, on Spotify. You can see the actual live them on Ed Sullivan, and he didn't like the lyric "Girl, we could get much higher," and so they agreed to say, "Girl, we couldn't get much better." And of course, Jim was like, "Fuck that! I'm gonna do higher," and he does, and he kind of leans into it, and he just brings the energy in the chorus as well. And take a look at Jim's eyes. I mean, I think he's high as fuck in this, when they're filming this. But hey, most of the other rock stars in the '60s were high as fuck a lot too, and it's still an iconic television moment for the Doors. Check it out. And they were supposed to do multi-episode deal there with good old Ed Sullivan. He wasn't real happy, so they lost that. He's like, "I'm not bringing you back." I don't think Jim cared. Also around this time, Buick paid $75,000 to use the song in their ad. The band had a true democracy, had to be 4-0, and all these decisions, all the band members agreeing. For whatever reason, when this particular vote took place, Jim wasn't around, and I didn't kind of tell Jim until the ad hit, and Jim wasn't real happy. So, yeah. So the other kind of funny thing about the song is Frank Sinatra hated the song when it came out, because he's like, "Hey, they're kind of stealing my thing," and yeah, Jim is doing a pretty smooth, much sexier version of Frank Sinatra. So Sinatra hated it. Supposedly, he just lost it and was livid every time he heard the song. But hey, man, you can't. Frank, you were cool, but Jim Morrison was even cooler, and you can't. What's the word here? You can't copyright cool. So yeah, as I said, there's 43 in my, covers. I'm not gonna do every single one. Some of them I won't, UB40, they have a pretty decent reggae version. Etta James, Johnny Mathis did one. Isaac Hayes, one of my all-time favorites, he has a live version of this. We're not gonna go in, but that's let you know. So Jose Feliciano, July 1968, a year after the Doors released it, he also, releases this, and it actually charts. Hit number 3, and it's more of a Latin pop version. Amy Stewart, 1979, there's an 8 minutes and 22-second disco version of Light My Fire. Next page, yeah, you can hear the wrestling. It's all Stevie Wonder on his 1969 My Cherie Amour album does it, and it's quintessential Stevie. And what Stevie, I love when I talk to you about some of these big names that do the songs, I'm going to tell you what they do to make the song theirs and unique. So Stevie, first of all, everybody knows Stevie's sound, particularly that late 60s and 70s sounds. But Stevie does 3 harmonica solos in it, and that's kind of how he really makes it his own, and he brings in lots of strings and horns from, what was the The Funk Brothers, I think it was the name of the house band, the studio band from Motown. Let's see, Al Green. Yeah, Al did this. Al Green Gets Next to You, 1971. So Al starts with spoken word. Uh, and he has a nice breakdown in this too. And it's just Al being Al. I mean, we all know what Al Green's about. So, yeah, it's just classic Al Green here. Let's see, who else? Interesting one next. Irma Franklin did a version in the late 60s. Now, Irma is a gospel singer, and Irma was Aretha Franklin's big sister. But Irma does a pretty nice job. The other thing I didn't know, so that's why I love doing these episodes, is Irma was originally did Piece of My Heart that Janis Joplin did in 67. So I thought that was Janis's song. Janis actually borrowed it from Irma Franklin, and it's a cover song. Who knew? Irma's, Sister Aretha can sing, but Irma ain't bad, and her little Piece of the Heart version ain't bad either. Who do we have here next? And I mean, everybody, there's all kinds of different versions of this, in the 43. And I would say that 43, 30 of them or 35 of them are actually, good or really good. I mean, I think it speaks to the quality of the song that, I can come up with 43 and a lot of them are good. And I mean, um, Nancy Sinatra did it in the late 60s, Frank's daughter. I guess, what are they going to say? Frank's pissed. He got mafia connections, so Nancy does it. But it's a lot of big strings, her, big band kind of sound. Jackie Wilson did it. So it's kind of funk meets a symphony here. And Jackie's one of the great male vocalists of all times. There's a nice sax solo in this as well. Manny Ripperton then redoes it again with Jose Feliciano in 1979. Let me see who else. There's a lot of folks that did it. There's some pretty good funk versions on my 43. Charles White and the Watts 133rd Street Band, they do a soulful, this jazzy version of it. A group called Africa from 1968 do African rhythms, with Light My Fire. I always wondered what it would be like to do a funkified version. I'm a funk guy of Light My Fire. There's a couple of them in that kind of suffice. Ebony Rhythm Band, early 1970s version is instrumental, but it's funky. Booker T and the MTs, they do MGs from, Stax, the late 60s, they do a laid back soulful version of it. Carl Douglas probably, oh man, I would say this is the 70s, maybe the first half of the 70s. I couldn't pin it with its R&B, funk, or disco. It's a little bit of all that stuff, but he does a really nice version of it. The Mops, early 1970s, kind of a little garage band version of it. Joel Diamond does a disco version. Black Mighty Orchestra does a pretty funky version of it. Stanley Turrentine does a instrumental jazz version of Light My Fire. So yeah, these folks are just, everybody loves I Light My Fire, and they're doing some pretty nice versions of it too. Manuel Granada, jazz, guitar, flamenco. Ian Gilliam with Rick Wakeman does a a rock jazzy jam band version of Light My Fire. I mean, sort of even, obviously similar but different, than the Doors did it in their own thing. And what else we got here? A group called Dune has a disco version. Finger Roll has a jazz version I kind of like. So yeah, 43 versions. I missed a couple, but there's a couple other playlists of Light My Fire on Spotify done by other people. But I mean, people are doing this song because they love it. And I mean, it's just a classic song. Um, I don't know if this or Break On Through was the first Doors single. But they only had two number ones, and this is the first one. I love Break On Through to the Other Side, and I'll be doing the episode classic songs on that at some point too, because I love my Doors. But we got to start with Light My Fire, and just check out all the live versions. I have another uh, playlist on Spotify of just the live versions of Light My Fire. I mean, it was the highlight of the Doors concert. They tore it up every single time, and there's a couple of them where Robbie Kreiger on guitar and Ray Manzarek on organ, and they're just talking and bobbing and weaving, and having a conversation between their instruments. It's great. And what a great band. John Densmore, great drummer. Krieger, great guitarist. And Ray Manzarek, one of the best keyboard players in of the in classic rock and of the classic rock era. So, yeah, they sometimes they'd use bass in the studio, but live it was only the three of them, and so Ray Manzarek would always play the bass with his left hand. So yeah, I had to do my boys, had to do this song. Anyway, thank you for coming through. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave some comments. Um, hey, if you listen to go on Spotify and listen to my Light My Fire covers. Give me your top 5 covers. I didn't do that this time, but I'd be, hey, trying to get some comments or whatever. So, hey, got 5 albums out. It's right here on the YouTube channel. It's also on my, on all the streaming services that record under the name Exodus, Xodus. My first album is called Book 1. I also write science fiction and fantasy. I got 2 novels and a novella right under the name Peter Exodus Okafor. You can get all that on Amazon.com. So thank you again for coming through, and I will see you next episode.